VTubers need them, stop giving them scraps. I'm not gonna try and sugarcoat it because becoming a VTuber is no easy feat. Assuming you are like myself, of the artistically challenged variety, you're dependent on having to hire out multiple people in order to get a VTuber model out. You're going to need some combination of a concept artist, somebody to draw out all of your moving biddies, and someone to add all of the jiggle physics. And that's just the base requirement. This won't usually include all of the other streaming assets, assuming you decide to be a streamer, tagged on top of the already higher than average cost of equipment. I'm not gonna pretend like it's not discouraging to want to be a VTuber, but being told you can't because you were born a poor. Now, there are far more economic ways of becoming a VTuber, but for today, I want to focus on the artist side of things. What first got my attention was a Twitter post I had seen recently where another VTuber had compared the prices of a model pre-Vtuber boom to the prices post-Vtuber boom. And it's this that really got me thinking, because low-key, they were right. It's a curious thing to see because in most other industries, as time goes on, products get cheaper, not more expensive. Despite this, I'd actually have to argue not only is this different, I'd argue they should cost more. So to get a bit more of an understanding of why this actually is, I'm gonna need you guys to think of this more like an artist selling as a business. We hardly ever do think of the business side of things because we are the customer. How the business runs is none of our concern. It's not up to us to worry about whether or not a business is economically viable. So I don't exactly blame VTubers for having these sorts of complaints. The first bare minimum thing to understand about VTubing is that there is simply a higher expectation of product now compared to before. As VTubing grew more and more, it became harder and harder to stand out. One of the easiest ways to stand out was to simply invest more than the last guy in design and rigging. Naturally, this is going to come with a higher cost of labor. More parts being drawn, more parts that need to get set up to move, more outfits to make yourself seem more professional as an anime person shouting into the mic at 4 AM. There is a corporate component to this as well, muddying the water to what a model should be, because the top dogs all have these extravagant designs that in comparison make yours look worse to a viewer. If what they're used to seeing is this, then yes, by comparison, you do seem worse off right off the fly. In an attempt to copy the corporate structure, they forget the one thing that corporate has to deal with: corporate pricing. But this rabbit hole goes a bit deeper than that. See, in business, there is a such thing called a cost to benefit analysis, which is just a fancier way of asking two questions. One, for the amount of effort I'm putting into this project, what do I get out of it? And two, what am I losing if I don't take another option? This one concept affects artists in multiple ways. So we're gonna break this down starting with the first part of this. The first thing we all know is VTuber models can take weeks or even months to fully produce. Between drawing and rigging, whether you uptake 2D or 3D, it's time consuming with adding movement for the last 3 hours only to finish a single eye. Being the average turnaround time of most of these basic ones is going to be around 2 to 3 weeks, it's no surprise that this needs to be worked into the pricing structure. Rent's due on the first, with the average being like $1,800 a month, but you only have the time to make 4 models in any one given month, again assuming you're fully booked. What you make has to be able to cover rent, food, light, the sub to live 2D cubism. If you are put into that sort of a situation, how do you structure your pricing model to not only remain profitable, but to break even? Slowly, but surely, we're piecing it together. The only real way you can make that sort of a structure economically viable is to either charge an exorbitant price per piece, or divest your time into providing multiple other services. You'll never see an artist that does just emotes. They might also make starting soon screens, transitions, chatting scenes. Damn, reading this back, they really do sound like GFX artists. But deciding to go down the divestment route does bring about its own problems. For every service they provide, the quality of each will naturally suffer, which brings us to that second part of the cost to benefit analysis. What do I lose provided I can do something else? Everything we just went through revolves around having a perfect world sort of mentality. Any artist knows the vast majority of the time your first final output does not mean mission complete. Customers are more often than not going to ask for multiple revisions. The more time you spend on any one given project, the less money you can make because your time is being absorbed into something that is not making you a profit. That and cheaper things are absorbing your time that could be spent on much more lucrative clients. Sure, you're spending $500 on a model, but your artist has to finish some starting soon screens. Less time spent on your project because they have to time manage multiple things at once. That being said, where do I get the idea that they should cost more? When it comes to being a solo artist, unless you're doing some kind of corn, making ends meet is tough. So oftentimes, smaller artists can get a bit desperate. taking a commission oftentimes at an unfair price simply because they don't have any other choice. I'm not going to sit there and mold grandstand about how you shouldn't negotiate for lower prices or how you're somehow at fault after they agree. Just that it comes off as kind of exploiting in a way. We expect HoloLive level designs with Limelicious levels of tracking, but refuse to pay the guys responsible anything more than minimum wage. And that's on the higher end. With the cost of living going way up with how much they try and gaslight you, I think it's more than fair that they should have somewhat more of a reason to charge you more provided you're being given actually good art. If anything, it's ridiculous that the guys responsible for getting something done end up getting paid the least only because it's a creative endeavor. You walk into a kitchen, the chef gets paid the most. You walk into a doctor's office and the doctor gets paid the most. But for some reason you walk into an art studio and the artist gets paid the least? So when we basically make them fight for scraps, yeah, it's kinda cheating them out of their fair share, considering you couldn't exist without them in the first place. There are tons more artists have to deal with beyond just this. One of the biggest things being chargebacks. See, chargebacks are not like normal refunds. The seller is responsible for the transaction fee both ways. So if you take a risk on a customer and they decide to back out because they weren't satisfied for any reason at all, not only did you not make money, you're at a net negative from when you started. I don't know about you, but that's some bullshit. The easy answer to this is to use something like Skeb or VGen where there is some level of artist protection. But that's a platform fee that also needs to be factored in. That's going to be an extra 10 to 30% of what they normally would have charged you that now needs to be taken into account. I know it's one of those things that doesn't go over well because it's basically telling you you can't live a dream because you're broke. But if living that dream requires you to live it at the expense of someone else, it's probably better to just stick with the free assets we already have. Not everything has to be custom. Especially because half of you just sit there playing video games for 4 hours and just react to other people's content. Wow, chat. Wow, chat.